So, Darius, thank you for agreeing to do this interview with me.
You.
Introduce yourself to the people.
Okay, I am the intergalactic soul, the honorable brother, the revolutionary ourselves, Darius Lockhart. I am a professional wrestler. I've been an independent professional wrestler for almost 10 years now. It's been a hell of a journey, but I'm out of Charlotte, North Carolina, 28 years old, and now I'm trying to go into business for myself a little bit and trying to create for my own. So I'm the owner of Ase Wrestling down from Charlotte, North Carolina. We're coming on our second show coming up, and I think that summarizes it up.
So, how did you get started on this path?
Oh, that's very interesting. I wasn't a fan as an early kid, but I found it when I was 12. I know that's like a kid, but it's like, throughout my life, wrestling has been there. People are showing me wrestling action figures, Triple H and all these things like that. But I didn't really, I didn't care about it, right? And then someone convinced me to watch it when I was 12, and I just knew I was like, once I saw it at that age, I got it. Something clicked. I had an emotional response, and I think I showed up the next week, and then I realized, oh, I'm here again, and I'm actually caring about these people. I think I'm hooked. And so you fast forward, I think that's the end of 2007. If you fast forward to like by February 2008, I'm buying magazines, I'm buying DVDs. I want to know everything I can because I was always that type of child who wanted to know every single thing about what he loved. I was watching movie documentaries about how they made the films that I loved and things like that. And I grew up watching those. I love the 80s, I love the 70s. I wanted to know everything. What happened before I got here? What were y'all doing? So as an inquisitive kid, I just fell in love with the sport, and it was the first sport or anything physical that I really was drawn to. So I knew by 13 I wanted to be a professional wrestler. So I just kind of drew my own plan out. Looked up schools that I was thinking about going to or whatever. And my mom always said I had to finish college. So whatever wrestling school I went to, I always followed it up with what college was in the area that I could go to get my mom off my back and let me wrestle. You know what I mean? But while I was doing high school studies, I was researching a paper that I was doing on pro wrestling in high school, found a wrestling school here in Charlotte. And I was on the amateur team at my high school. I quit the amateur team, went into the pro wrestling school, High Spots Pro Wrestling out of Charlotte, North Carolina, which is defunct now, but at the time, they used to train. But I went there, and my mom told me, if you want to do this, you're gonna have to raise most of the money. If you raise, I think it was about $300 to enrollment. If you raise 200 of it, I'll pay you the last 100. And I did. I found it. I didn't have a job, but I got the money, and she paid for the last little bit. And from 17 years old, I was training, and I was about 18 when I had my first one. So
Yeah, see,
that's
that's,
about.
we have to make sure you're fully invested before we
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't
get
mean
that
to
money.
ramble. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Oh yeah, like my mother is she don't play that. She wants to make sure, like, don't waste my money now. You know? That
So,
was always her.
what part of it appealed to you? It was the athletic part of it or the entertainment part?
I think it was the entertainment. I mean, the athleticism, of course, wowed me. I don't think I'd ever seen people with those physiques before. I thought that was larger than life. I was a big superhero kid, so to see that in real life and go, "Oh wow!" Like there's an element of this person is being beat up and someone is saving him and
Mm.
getting him and beating up the bad guy. Oh, tick 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 tick. I get it now. You know what I mean? And so once I understood it was a show and then it became fun to me. And then I realized I think a bad guy did something to one of my favorite good guys at the time, and he
Mhm.
hurt him, injured him. And I was just so angry. And I was like, this is why people like wrestling, because I want to see this guy get beat up.
Yeah,
As
so
a 12-year-old, I was like,
psychological.
so I think that's really what it was. I think it was the storytelling element of it. I'm always a sucker for a good story.
It looks like you were already in the on the trajectory to some kind of form of entertainment.
Yeah, thank you. I think, yeah, I always was. As a kid, I was a movie child. I was a cinema buff. I was the only child. So a lot of the times, my mom is at work and everything like that. Would drop me off with grandma. Sometimes the TV is just kind of watching me sometimes, but watched HBO way too young. We're just seeing film after film after film. And I just became one of those guys. I think I wanted to be an actor for professional wrestling. But this just kind of it felt more real. It's in the real time. It's awesome.
Well, I see what you guys do as an art, right? And so you're going to be featured in the art and entertainment section of the
All right.
magazine. And
I'm
it's
with it.
definitely art, like the way you form your body, the way you move your body when you guys are flying through the air. the
Mm.
gimmicks, the artistry, the costume, like the whole thing is a work of art on like several levels. And
Absolutely.
so that's why I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to talk to you about art, and also because February is Black History Month.
Mm.
I thought you would be the perfect person because you clearly have a love of your community. I really want to know like more about how you came up with this. I don't really like calling it a gimmick because it seems fake, right? Like when you say gimmick, it seems fake, but I
It's
don't
fake,
like
right?
it's not your love of Black folks ain't fake. So
No, no, yeah. It's always that line. I do a lot of interview. Well, when I do interviews, I don't do too many of them now. But when I do them, it's people always hit that line where they go, "Well, well, I don't want to call it a gimmick," and it's true. I love that people respect it that much. Where it's really not a gimmick, but I did do what people do when they try to find a gimmick, which was finding something inside of you and turning the volume up on that. So I wanted to turn, yeah, my love for people, my love for seeing the humanity in others, and being able to say something with your art and turn that up in myself. And I had a lot of things I wanted to say at that time, a young man kind of coming to fruition. I was an African diaspora studies minor in college. So I'm learning about my people every day, but also I'm living in real time where you got Michael Brown, where you got Trayvon, and Trayvon looks similar to me. So it's very real in real time. So I want my art to say something, just like the artists I listen to say something. So it is not really a gimmick, it's just an extension of self. But I do understand, I do dramatize it because pro wrestling is dramatic. So you gotta refer to it somehow, right? It's not a gimmick, but it's a part of me, I suppose. This act. I will say act. I'll take that sometimes, I get what you're trying to say.
so were you raised in like a really pro-Black family? Like were your family Black Panthers or revolutionaries or
No, actually. No, not actually. My family was pretty basic, pretty normal. We were just, people just trying to get by. You know what I mean? My mom worked at a bank. She was college educated, college graduate. My father w wasn't really, he dropped out of school kind of early, but he was good with his hands. At one point, he was a boxer, and then he ended up in construction and drywall for a long time. They kind of taught me about that that racism existed earlier, and I always saw it as a concept in things I watched, so I kind of understood that people will not like me because I'm Black very early in my life. But I was also just most I went to schools that were kind of mixed race. I had a little bit of everybody, but they were always predominantly Black. I went to a Black church. I was always in the church growing up, so I just know to see the human of, like, I know, like, Black people, just what I was around. I'm Black, is what it is. So I'm always going to see it that way. But I would like to think that throughout what was happening in real time, like I said, and then going to PWI, honestly, and because I was just trying to get into a school because I just wanted to appease mom so I could just wrestle. I didn't think about what school I went to. I was just like, this one accepted me, I'll take it. And so I went to UNCG, but ended up coming across a learning community of young Black men called Embark, which was Men Begin Achieving Results Collectively. And we were engaging with books like such as bell hooks and things like that, but it required you to take an entry either into intro level into human sexuality or intro into African American studies. And I took that class, the latter, and it ended up being my foray into, like, yeah, learning more about Black people. But I would like to think that that time and period in the diaspora, I should say, we're not just Black people, the diaspora across the globe. But I would like to think that it didn't really teach me that I was Black, but it did teach me really more so what whiteness is as a conscious, as a collective, and how it affects and minimizes Blackness and what it does about it. So it really became a seeing the world in real time and being like, okay, this is who I am to the world. This is what I represent to people,
how
even
they
people I've
see
met before.
you?
How
Mm.
they see me became more apparent, and I knew what microaggressions were because, like I said, I went to a mixed high school, so I was interacting with white kids, and they would say things that I didn't like, but I didn't know why I didn't like them. You know what I mean, or things like that. But I think really my time educate in higher education really kind of, and interacting with work like Kendrick Lamar and D'Angelo, I was a big fan of those guys. They dropped two pieces of work that dropped during that time of my education that were really influential on me. And really, I want to say something with my art, like they say something with their art. And that was really where the revolutionary was born from. It wasn't necessarily, my parents being Black Panthers. They taught me that, being you're beautiful and being black is something to be proud of. And my dad was black and berry, sweeter Jews, all that. That's fine. But they were just normal black folks. It's just I think I'm just an empathetic man. I'm just an empathetic person. That's just really what it comes down to.
So were you doing something like, did you have a gimmick before that?
I was just a young guy trying to figure it out. I
Oh,
was
okay.
just
So
an
you
athlete.
you got this early and just oh, and
Yeah.
that's so good. That's really great. Um,
Thank you. Yeah.
has it ever been seen, like, has your gimmick ever been seen as a barrier in the industry? Do you feel like it's been seen as a barrier?
Absolutely.
Have you ever been
I've
told to like tone it down or anything like
uh,
that?
I was getting that immediately. I was
Really?
getting that before I was even officially the revolutionary. I remember I made a pair of trunks that said Black Lives Matter on them. But just because I was just moved by the movement at the time, it was just, and we can talk about what that movement turns into anytime. But at the moment, I thought I was doing the right thing. And I remember people telling me then, hey, you might not want to wear that tonight. Maybe you shouldn't wear that tonight. Don't do that because whatever. I remember officially becoming the revolutionary and then having someone in a black man in the industry that I idolized tell me to my face, you'd be further if you stop doing that shit. You know what I mean? You'd be further if you stop. And so, and that was, I knew that was coming from a place of him being held back. That was a hurt that he was projecting onto me. I think that he was being ostracized because of the color of his skin. And I think he wanted better for me, but it came out in the ugliest way that it could have. But I understood that there was pain in
Right.
that conversation because but you know that they're hurt. They're coming from a place of hurt. So I choose to empathize rather than get offended by it because it's like, you know, hey, we all have our struggles and we all have our journeys of where we can see things or not. But when it comes to that, it's been I've heard even a higher up company, I don't need to say the names, but it got back to me where a very high profile company I was getting ready to work for and think about signing with said, hey, we would sign Darius off of his talent alone. He's so good, but we're worried about the revolutionary thing.
I find it very interesting that because you have it's a very positive image.
Mhm.
It's not like we are so pro black, we are against others. It's
Yeah,
just a love of where you come from. That's all it
absolutely.
is. It's very positive. And
Absolutely.
for people to find problems with that, I find it very interesting because there's never a shortage of the negative portrayals of black men in wrestling.
My point exactly. I would say this to just ease up on that one. The cool thing about there's so many black people in pro wrestling now. I think the weight of having to represent everyone is
Yeah,
slowly like I
now.
would like to think it's yeah now, but
Now,
it's like that is that's what they push. But we can both be
yeah.
real. That's what they push.
And
So
now, because also
it
being politically correct
yeah
is the thing right now. But I'm an
right
old woman and I was watching wrestling
no
in the
mhm.
80s and I was doing some research and found out a lot of interesting information where I didn't even know that they didn't allow a black wrestler in high school, like black people
Mhm.
to wrestle in high school until the 50s.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
something
the
that
50s.
that's
So
something that
they had already had the black baseball teams, everything.
oh my
And there
gosh
was a
yeah.
rule. I was trying to find out what the rule was because they said it was because of some rule, but I couldn't find the background.
Listen
It was very interesting. And then when I looked at like the pro wrestling, you know,
mhm.
um, I read some really interesting content about Junkyard Dog, who I used to love.
Yes
Um,
yes
and like what happened with him and the images, and then even when you think of like certain things that now you could look at them in 2023, 2024, and the images might be seen as problematic, but they were something different at the time. But there is still like is I think it's funny that there are a lot more degrading, portrayals of our people
yes
um, that are put on the big screen in
yes.
all industries, but specifically in wrestling, I noticed that. And then when
Mhm.
you see something positive and to hear that,
It's
they don't want
disheartening.
to promote it, it's very problematic.
No, to say the least, and it's something that I've had to, I won't say make peace with, but understand
Yeah,
that because I won't even take shot to until I really start speaking out and being the revolutionary and saying that this thing out loud. I mean, like we talk about there's the imagery that they show you of us. We think about the lack of excellence that they show with us too, because if you think about it, if WWE had 53, 50 plus years of world champions,
Mhm.
and the first one was in 1999, and it was half black man, and we didn't get another one until 2019. And
Oh,
then now that's three really quickly. So now we have four black out of like maybe 50, 60, 70 WWE champions. When you never see yourself at the top of the card, it does send a message. I had a friend of mine who wanted to be a pro wrestler in the 90s. He was a young black man, and he was convinced that he couldn't be one because all of us lost. We must not be good at pro wrestling. What they show you on the screen is very detrimental to a psyche, but also to just opportunities. And it's never that's always going to be an issue in pro wrestling, which is why, and I realize it's a trickle down effect
oh, you
because
think it's always going to be the problem?
as long as we don't have positions of power in professional wrestling, yes, I think bias is going to implement that because a lot of people can't remove their personal bias and understand other people's situation until it benefits them. Um, I think we're getting to a place now where I think the hot seat is on maybe some companies. So some people do it out of obligation, but I don't think it's people's natural inclination to put black people in positions of power on screen because they haven't been conditioned to do that. In fact, the past 50 years of WWE television has conditioned them to think otherwise. That's why we see WWE today. We has a slew of main event talent. Now we have more stars than ever, but none of them are really black. None of them are black. Bobby Lashley's still on the mid card. He's floating, doing nothing. All the main event right now, there's no top main event black talent here. And we can that's a long-term project, but it seems like we always have to wait. So I just think it's just me being honest about it.
You're young.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just me being like, I didn't really want to wait. But I say all that to say this. I'm not foolish to say this. As soon as I start speaking up, I notice a lot more people around me, black folks, start getting opportunities because the conversation is being had. But the person who starts the conversation always has to be the person you kind of have to walk over. They have to go with the arrow in the back. And I'm sadly, fortunately, am littered with arrows. So that's just my situation. That's been my path the past few years. But
Then you got Ashe, right?
I gotta say, so I have to wait for
Tell
them to
me
say
about
anything.
that. Tell me about like how you, so is it a promotional company or is it a complete wrestling company? Tell me more about what's going on.
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything. It started with trying to give people a place to wrestle where they weren't marginalized and told that they can only do so much in a box. You know what I mean? They're to say, oh yeah, we see you with the chain on. We see you. I didn't want to do that. I wanted people to be free of that. And also get their ideas passed because I had a lot of ideas passed on to where I'll say something and because the person in charge didn't get it, I didn't get the opportunity to do it. So I wanted to eliminate that middleman and say, let's just put our stuff out there because it's good stuff. And that just kind of manifested. Eventually, I realized that this would need to be something that centralized families and kids because that's how you build on generations. That's how you stay long-term customers. But that's how you really influence people on a personal and heartfelt level. Children, this is what it's for. So then it became that. Then I realized that, maybe we have to be careful in what I was always thinking we had to be careful about what we put on, but I also wanted to pay respect to what I love about wrestling. So that's kind of Southern, old school, that style, something storytelling wise, the storytelling element once again. But once that happened, I realized, people like the way that I present pro wrestling. A lot of people that I meet, black folks I meet in the street, and they go, if wrestling looked like this, it would be dope. And so I'm always thinking, what do regular folks who used to like wrestling, could like wrestling, but haven't tried it, what would they really like to bring them to a show? What could this, I have to sell them experience, not just the wrestling, but the experience. So the experience has to be curated to be somewhere chill. So I just kind of wanted to make a spot like where the live events are cool, but everything else we have to stay kind of current with events and things that are popular to supplement the pro wrestling. So then at birth, the DJ shows and the music and everything, the artists and everything like that we tried to like surround this with because all of that accentuates the stars of the pro wrestlers. So the pro wrestlers come off as bigger stars, but also we're drawing community and fusing community because we're reaching out and pulling in, and we're also giving out and giving artists opportunities as well. So I kind of wanted to do something I was passionate about, involve other things I'm passionate about, like music and community, and just kind of mesh it and have a baby. And that's basically what Ashe is, really.
It's very exciting. I looked at a lot of the promotions and stuff for it. I want to come to an event.
Please.
I got to come to North Carolina, I guess. Because
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
are you doing traveling shows? Are you coming up north?
So I was really holding a lot of cards to chess, but I'll be honest about it now. I don't see us doing that right, at least not in the first year.
Mhm.
Right away. I think it becomes a must see, more of a must see feeling, more of a must see event if it's in one place and you know where to catch it. Then it becomes destination. Then it becomes a good time in a weekend and you can make trips out of it. But also, I wanted to get back to Charlotte and really like lean into the sense of community and city and have this become something you can do when you come to Charlotte, whether you're into wrestling or not. Just, oh, I came to the Ase show. I thought that would be a real something to make business different. And also, I'm just getting started, so logistics of traveling is very hard for
Oh,
me.
I can
I'm trying to
understand.
figure it
I can
out.
understand that and the expenses. I
Oh
can.
yeah.
As a black wrestler, have you
Mhm.
ever felt like unsafe on the road? Have you ever felt like like we would see so many videos of just regular people driving and getting pulled over and horrible things happening. And as a
Mhm.
wrestler, I know you guys have to drive long distances, drive overnight.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't have money, they're in little raggedy cars,
Mhm.
or they're
Yeah.
like, like the things that would look suspicious where you got like four or five dudes in a car driving all
Yeah.
night. So have you ever felt like you were not like afraid or unsafe in the position you were in, or is it something that you've never had to think about?
Um, I know my surroundings. I'm always trying to like stay clairvoyant of that, or like understanding everything is around. But I have had a couple experiences where I remember I was driving from Augusta, Georgia, down to Jacksonville, Florida, so the south to the
Going to
south.
the South, like maybe I'm putting my own fears about
No,
the South one stuff, but
but
what are you
listen,
thinking
listen.
about?
I was with my girlfriend at the time. We were no longer together, but she was a rider for the situation. It was just her and I. We were driving, no lights, back road. We get pulled over. We look over. We're pulled over next to a cotton field. I can't write this. And the police officer comes up and is checking. And of course we're like, please, it's 3 a.m. Sorry, I'm not really painting pictures. 3 a.m. So nobody's on this road. It's just us, the cops, in a cotton field. And so we have to like stay calm. She's keeping me calm. But I'm talking to the guy and he asked me where I was going, where I was coming from, and I mentioned that I'm a pro wrestler. And that got me out the ticket.
I was
He
wondering.
goes, "Oh, I have a friend who does pro wrestling, yada yada yada." And luckily, he sent me on my way. But it was not lost on me that, yeah, it could have gone south. A couple of times I've wrestled and went to a gas station, and once again in Georgia, and thought people were trying to like. This is a bunch of like hillbilly kind of guys try to tell me something. I mean, someone said something to me like, "I wouldn't go back that way if I were you." I was like, "What's
Mhm.
that supposed to mean?" And then I was like, I don't like that. And then so I act like I didn't hear it. He said it. He said, "Hey man, I wouldn't go that way if I were you." And I was
Mhm.
like, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "The police are that way. I just want them to look out for you. I just want to make sure you're not. They're kind of crazy." I go, "Oh, thank God." And then I walk into the gas station. From there, I pivot and I go into the gas station and I hear, "Hey, hey," and I'm like, why don't these folks leave me alone? Like I just need to get home. And I look to the left and it's a car and it's full of a family who just came from the show and they were just telling me, "Hey, we love the show."
That's
So
really,
sometimes it gets you like, tense, but
yeah.
you never know. These things are, you never know. I've
Yeah.
had a couple of
Wrestling gives
situations.
you, yeah, because wrestling is like a very revered sport in the South, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
So,
you get respect off of it. You can coast off that for a little bit.
yeah.
But
Um,
but so is, they'll cheer for a black quarterback too if you let them. If he scores enough points, they'll do anything.
all sports. I don't know how the black
So
consciences are getting treated when they get pulled over, but
but anyway.
one of the things I did want to ask because I asked another wrestler that I know, and
Mhm.
if y'all don't have it, I am making the suggestion publicly. Do y'all have a green book of wrestling? Do you know what the
This
green
is
book is?
I do know what a green book is. I do know.
Do y'all have a green book?
No, but someone was trying to make one a couple years ago. I don't know what happened to the project. I'm sure that there's been one at some point that we don't know about. And you know what's so funny? I'm gonna ask Ron Simmons and Teddy at the next show if they ever had a green book or anything because someone was like, we should have one a few years
Yeah.
ago. And I just didn't hear anything else about it. But we
I want
should.
to bring
It's
it
not a
up
bad idea.
because I'm like, I want to put my house down as a safe place for the wrestlers to stay at. I think
No,
that that's
no,
important. And
absolutely.
are on the road so much, like all night. I just don't understand how you do it. I can't drive over an hour. without wanting to go to sleep. So
It's hard to get back to it. I tell you that much now. Like now that I've stopped for a little bit and I have to, it's I hate long trips now.
before we started recording, I brought up my favorite entrance is when you had the video with Malcolm X and all these beautiful, beautiful. I don't even know where you got all them girls from, but yeah, all
All
those
personal friend.
beautiful sisters dressed like Black Panthers, and everybody came out and they
Yeah.
had their fists up in the air. And then when I saw all of the people, including all the white folks, put their fists in the air,
Crazy.
I cried. I
Wow.
cried like a baby. It was the most amazing thing that I've ever seen. How does that make you feel? Like, do you feel like you are part of like a transformation of
Mm.
sorts?
When doing the entrance or when coming up with
Yeah,
the
when you
fit.
see people
Yeah.
who ideally you would think, well, oh my gosh, they're not going to be like if the promoter is like, hey, you need to tone this down. But then when you do it and all the fans go crazy and you have a sea of white people with their Black Power fists up in the air, like
Hmm.
it's amazing. So
Yeah.
how does that make you feel?
Yes, I do think I try not to personalize it and take it like too on the ego. I don't let my ego centralize or anything like that. But I do like to think like, wow, okay, then what I aim to do is working a bit. You know what I mean? This is what I wanted to say something with my work, and if it affected people, then let it affect the people. I didn't want to put the cause on to say I'm going to cure racism. That wasn't my mentality.
Right,
But I did want to say something with my work, and if it affected people positively, then we would take that as a win. And I've gotten a lot of strong interactions from people throughout the work that does touch me. The same night you're talking about, I had a white man come up to me at my merch table that night, older gentleman, maybe 70s, early 70s, and he said he grew up with a black best friend in the South, and they used to go to pro wrestling shows together. And he said they used to go there for years, decades. And he said his friend had died the past few years, but he said
mhm,
he could wish that his friend could have seen the night because it would have made him very proud. And because his friend was always upset about the negative representation we spoke about in pro wrestling. So he said it would have touched me. And that really touched me personally. So I take pride in the work that I do. And I would like for people to see the work for what it is and what it could be and realize that wrestling can be such a powerful tool to do
right.
something like that's just generally how I feel about it. I wish people took what we do with a little bit more, responsibility and understanding of that, and just being like, man, what we can do, even to our mutual friend, who may to people see the visibly, they see him and may want to cross the street. But what happens when you can get a child whose parent might cross the street to sit there and clap and root for someone who looks like our mutual
Right,
friend? And
right.
I told him one day, I said, there's so much beauty in what you're doing just by being a vessel and doing what you do so excellently and touching to these kids and interacting with them. And don't take that for granted. Because that's something we all have the power to do,
Yeah, it
regardless
is.
of color. Yeah.
I do think it's not about you having a big kid, but I do think it's important that you do realize like the position that you're in, you're making an impact on kids, right? It's just like the
Mhm.
negative stereotypes, like that does have an impact on children. And so I think it's important what you're doing is very important because people don't like to learn, right? They don't want to learn anything new.
Yeah.
It's a hot as soon as somebody says anything about critical race theory, there's pushback, right?
Mhm.
People love wrestling.
Mhm.
So for a little kid who might in other parts of life hear negative, it's honestly it reminds me of when I was young, right?
Mhm.
I I met this man. I had a friend. He was a little white boy I went to school with, right? We
Mhm.
went to his birthday party and his father, when we showed up, me and my god brother showed up. His mother was very nice. But when we showed
Mhm.
up to the birthday party, he kicked us out the house.
Mhm.
And was like, who let these N-words in the house?
Wow.
Right. And that was our
Wow.
friend. And
Wow.
and he wouldn't even speak to us anymore because I think he was just devastated.
Mhm.
But a kid like that who might
Mhm.
have negative things thrown at them, even though like
Yeah.
and because children are pure, you
Yeah,
learn
absolutely.
racism,
Absolutely.
right? So if you're
Absolutely.
like that's my friend and all those people, even like the most racist people sometimes will always be like, oh, I love Michael Jordan or I love, it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
they have this separate thing. So I
Yeah.
think that when these children come into your show and they
Mhm.
see positive imagery and see that these people, you might have like a black nationalist flag waving around, but you still hugging on the white kids and you're shaking hands and picking them up and taking pictures. And it's no hate. I think that does make an impact on young children.
I would like
I
for it
think it's
to,
important.
I try to I've always referred to it ever since I started being revolutionary as putting medicine in the candy. I heard that terminology earlier on, and I've
Right.
always tried to stick to it. Um, yeah, I just as long as we can, yeah, just put a seed there, plant a seed, so to speak. You
That's
know what I
right.
mean?
Indeed.
That's all we can try to do. Because I've dealt with a similar story too. You deal with something as a child, and it just affects the way you mess around. But that's if they can come to the show and just enjoy themselves and realize it's all love. It's kind of the same spirit as Fred Hampton's Rainbow Coalition. That's what I also pull from.
Yeah.
Just understanding that we are all in unity, and we're actually under the oppression of capitalism, which racism is the tool of. So we have to do that. You know what I mean? So I try to remember that and invoke that and realize it doesn't have to be us versus them. It's all love. But people see my visual presentation, and it's the assumption is of course not that, but that speaks more to them than me and my work. So
Right. But it's the same thing. Like, just like you said, when you're like at that gas station, or even when I go down south or whatever, and you see like a guy with a super long beard and a flannel shirt, and you come in the gas station, you're like, oh my God. And he's very nice. He opens a door
very
for
nice.
you, calls you ma'am. It's wonderful.
Here's a crazy story. I was on the road with Ian Maxwell and Rayhan and Tejas and another young wrestler, and we were delivering a ring, and we were in this big truck, and we got stuck on the side of a mountain. We could not turn around or anything like this, and we sat there for 20 minutes spinning our wheels. Ian blew out one of our tires. It was insane. But one of the things that happened was there was a guy. This is an old dirt country road, one lane, really, and it's an old little home at the top of this mountain, and the door opens up, and this white man walks out. And he's bald, and he has a skeleton tattooed on his face where his whole life,
What?
like where the eye should go, is like it's black. It's the teeth are right here on his mouth. Like his whole head is a skeleton. It's a skull.
Oh, that's
And he
terrifying.
sits there and looks at us, and we're like, almost stop what we're doing. We're like, and he looks and goes, "Y'all need some help?" And he sat there and helped us get out of that hole. And I cannot write that. I promise you, it's a real thing. You can't write people off.
Yeah,
You
you
really can't.
definitely can outright people off. And I think that maybe because of social media and everything that's going on, it's really nice to see that some of the walls are coming down and people are seeing, just like you say, it's the people way above us who
Yeah.
are
But,
causing manipulation and stuff like that that's very divisive.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, that and just, years of this internalization, you know what I mean? People are informed by their habits and the things that they consume mentally, which is why I try to, try to put positive message in front of them because people do consume that and it creates a little nest up there. And there are a lot of people who have nest of white supremacy and it's expanded. I mean, that's just naturally what we're watching. If we live here in America, if you turn on a television, you're watching and you're part of the nest somewhere. So it's just really understanding of how to meet people where they're at. So then that seat gets a little smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and those biases and walls. Because you say we're knocking down the walls, but there's still a lot of ugliness behind those walls we have to address. But I think the conversations, and I hate to just minimize the conversations, but the conversations that starts is a way to start seeing each other. Because when you start asking each other why, you start understanding a little bit more.
Mhm. A lot of times when there are some people who have a negative outlook on wrestling because of some of the things we've seen, right? And not to like take away the magic of wrestling or anything, but when these storylines are created,
Mhm.
you have to have a good guy and a bad guy. I do understand that, right?
Uh-huh.
So how much of that is the actual artist participating in this portrayal of how they're being seen?
So in terms of what's the connection between the creator's hands and the
Yeah.
person? How much is the person presenting? Like how much is what they do them and versus the creator? Is that what you're asking?
Well,
Um,
because I'm saying you're not. necessarily a victim. Say if you're okay, say you're a wrestler, they want to put a chain around your neck or they want to put, I
Um,
don't know, something crazy going on, right? Something
yeah,
that,
yeah.
your mama would frown on or
Right, right,
the
right,
community would frown on.
right.
Um, but how much of that do you think or see in your experience is something that's intentional on the part of the artist? Because it is an art, right? So
Yeah.
just like with rap music or films,
Mm.
you can't just tell stories of rainbows and Fruit Loops, right?
Right, right.
So like how much of that is like part of the artist and how much of that is like the showrunner or whatever they call it in wrestling who's like creating storylines, or is it like a one-to-one? Do they work on it together, or are artists necessarily, are they seen as victims, like I have to do it for a check? Like what is really going?
No, when it comes to having to do it for a check and victimization, I think we all in life and in wrestling have more power than we think we do, right? There's a lot of power in the word no, but it's the consequences which you get on the other side of that no, what people are really afraid of. That's what really comes down to. Now, what those consequences mean to you ultimately is the end result. That's what's going to really dictate what happens. But I think that there's a socialization amongst wrestlers. It's the same reason why we can't unionize. Everyone's afraid to lose a spot. It's an old mentality of everyone being, well, I would do this, but every other wrestler who ever wrestled before me told me that I would have to do whatever the booker said, and that's the culture of wrestling, and that's what we have to aspire to, because that's the job, and to an extent, it is the job. You show up, you're given the thing, you act it out, right? Okay, cool. But there is more power in the performer now more than ever to say, hey. I don't feel comfortable. I don't want to do this. Or, maybe we should try it another way. Because number one, people are more humane these days. I think, from a business standpoint, it gets harder to treat people wrong. But in an additional, I think that there are more options. People can go other places. You don't have to listen to what Vince says, because you can listen to what Tony tells you to do, or you can listen to what New Japan tells you to do, or you can listen to what your local indie tells you to do. You have options. So there's nets, there's more safety to fall on. But I don't think I think a lot of the people who may be victims are maybe victims, but more so of circumstance. The circumstance being maybe their mentality of how they were trained and brought up in this professional wrestling world, of what it tells them, to accept or not, or maybe a victim of their financial situation. Maybe I cannot afford to say no right now. Maybe I am locked in a contract for 5 years that tells me, da da da. And I know if I say no today, this person might be spiteful enough to bench me and have me sitting eating catering for 3 years, and I can't buy that thing for my kid. So it is an unfortunate power dynamic. It depends
A
on
lot
how
of people
far
are
you're up and how much you have to lose.
right? A lot of people were not just like, I want to be a wrestler. Like a lot of people just fell into it because of their circumstances, and maybe they
But
could.
but 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 honestly, it's worse if you're the former, in my opinion. If you
Yeah,
always wanted to be a wrestler, then they will absolutely take advantage of you,
I think
because
that, yeah,
because they know you want it and you'll do it for free. So if they can't get you to do it for free, or that situation, they'll get something else for free. And it might be your dignity, it might be whatever. And they're not saying everyone's trying to take advantage of you, but that is a facet of where, if they know that, this is all you ever wanted. And in reality, if this is all you ever wanted, you probably are willing to accommodate a lot more things
yeah.
that are personal value to you to attain what you need. And
Well,
so just remembering that you're a human before you're a performer is then essential.
I don't want to be insulting, but to me, from my perspective, it's almost like running away to join the circus. So you
Okay.
you have a love of this thing. Like people, I
Yeah,
talk to many people, and some wanted to be wrestlers their whole life, some didn't. Some of them, just like you said, got bit by some kind of bug and they
yeah,
just love it, right? And then
yeah.
whatever aspect of it, they're just fully invested, and they don't have like, they're not provided health insurance by companies. It's like you're really
Yeah, it's
giving
crazy.
yourself
Yeah,
for this art.
yeah,
And I think a lot of people who watch it don't understand. And that is one of the things that I do want to stress. Like, this is an art,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
people are giving of themselves
Suffering,
in a
suffering for art,
big way.
suffering for art.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people don't get paid. Like, I hear crazy stories about pay situations.
When I was coming up, and I remember I didn't really have much power or foot to stand on. I was very young. I went on the road and helped people drive 10 hours to Ohio. And we wrestled in the first match. And afterwards, they handed me and my opponent, because the opponent was in the car with us. They handed me and my opponent an envelope, the same envelope that said split it.
Yeah.
We opened it up and it was $20 inside the envelope.
Not
I promise,
$20.
promise you not. Now, we were being brought on with the other guys in the car because the other guys in the car really wanted the spot on this place. I can't tell you why, but
Mhm.
this meant a lot to them. And us getting this, them getting this booking for us helped us out, you know, and we wanted to help them keep grandstanding with the guy. So the inclination is we should say something. We should cuss this guy out. We want to get more money. But at the time, we were like, we want these other dudes to not be screwed over they brought two hotheads in the locker room. And see, that's what the socialization is what I'm talking about. So it's like, you have to be careful. But I remember saying that to myself that day, like, never again will I come here and wrestle, especially not for this much amount of money. Like, what are you,
Yeah, that's
but
not even gas money. That's crazy.
no, especially not in 2024.
But do you see pay disparities between black wrestlers and white wrestlers, or is just messed up pay all the way around?
I think it's just messed up pay all the way around. I'm not going to hold you. A lot of these white people getting screwed too, because it's on an independent level. The well, not even independent level, but the roots of professional wrestling, mega and small, are carny roots. They used to be in a carnival. It used to be a circus. It used to be a circus
Yeah.
act. So people will get over on you and be unprofessional however they can. So there are people who should be millionaires who will never make what they're worth. I tell everyone that. Someone asked me the other day, how should I as a wrestler regard and mark my worth is like, take not, asking for too much or da 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 da. And I said, I'm gonna be honest with you, you'll never get paid with your worth as a pro wrestler.
Never,
Ever,
never,
ever, ever. Because,
never.
in a blink of an eye, you could break your neck. In a blink of an eye, you could get brain damage. In a blink of an eye. And so it's like, people have lost their lives to professional wrestling
That's
in the
it.
ring and out of the ring. We've seen it. So you'll never get paid enough. But what it's worth to you, it's ultimately what you get out of it. What is worth to you is ultimately the end result, and that's what you have to be cognizant of. Make sure it doesn't step in front of your humanity or your self worth. Because if
Yeah.
you have no self love and you have no sense of what being of self and what being an adult is and how the world works outside of pro wrestling, and you come in young, there's a danger there that you might not be able to see when you're being taken advantage of. A part of me wishes I waited till 25 to get into pro wrestling just to let my brain fully develop. But starting at 17, it's a little bit of a. It's I always look out for anyone young in pro wrestling because it's just like I know people are going to try to take advantage of you because they know you're stars in your eyes
And that's
in
a
this
really
business.
good point because a lot of people do get into wrestling super young, like very, very young.
Mhm,
Yeah,
mhm.
yeah, I never even thought of that. Thanks for bringing that up because I never
No,
thought.
man, people in England start at like age 12. It's
Yeah,
nuts.
and then
Nuts.
especially the people like even the people their families have been in wrestling for years. They start so early, and then once you leave the comforts of your family, anything can happen.
It's it's game. And and it's a lot safer now because just the world we live in is adapted and people want to look out for each other just a little bit more. But even as early as the early 2000s, early 2010s, it was a little bit of the Wild Wild West. It gets a little bit calmer, but man, wrestling gets a little crazy sometimes.
Yeah, and hats off to the sisters out there because all
Yeah, nah, I feel it. I was watching some women's wrestlers from the 1950s the other day, 50s and 60s. They were wrestling Madison Square Garden, just going at it, and I was like, man, what they must have been through, what they must have gone through.
was that on your social media?
It was on my social
I
media, yeah.
saw that. Yeah, that was so cool. I
Mhm.
didn't even know they had women doing it so far back.
They were the big stars. They were the main event.
Yeah, that was insane.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny how life kind of goes in a circle like that
How
because
cool
they're
would it
rare.
be to say, like, oh, my grandmother was a wrestler? That must be awesome.
That must be so cool.
How many women do you have wrestling?
Lots. So the last show we had four. We had Trish and Aja Kong were in the main. Aja Kong came all the way over from Japan.
I didn't know she was from Japan.
She's Japanese. She's half black, half Japanese.
Oh,
Yes,
that's
ma'am.
so
Her
cool.
father was in the military. But yeah, she's Japanese. She's raised in Japan, so she flew all the way from Japan to be with us. Charity King and Kiera were on the undercard. They were the Kiera Hogan were on the second match, and that was a bit of a veteran versus rookie situation. But now we're on the second show, and we have even more women. We have in the next show we have a lot of women. We have up to I think one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. We have seven Black women featured on the next show. And that's just who's going to be active in the ring. That's not to say who's on commentary, the musician we're doing, the musician we're hosting, and the actual host of the show. So it's going to be full. I wanted to double down on our stance. Last time I thought that putting women in the main event kind of said enough, but I do want people to know that we do have their back when it comes to women's wrestling. We really do want to put our best foot forward with that.
Yeah, I looked at the poster and stuff, and I was like, this is really great. And also, you have a wide representation of beauty, and everybody doesn't look like a Barbie doll with inflatable,
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
So
you
it's really nice to see the beauty and the strength of these Black women who are out here wrestling. I think that's really important too. I wanted to thank you for that personally. I thought it was great.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I was admittedly very intentional about that, honestly. Yeah.
That's a lot of women too for you to just be starting.
You
That's a lot
know,
of women. That's really
the,
nice.
the ladies are out here. They're doing their thing. They're doing their thing, and I love to see it. If I can help amplify it, then I try to do that. When you look at our production team, it's full of people of all races and colors. You look at our camera photographers. You look at the people I employ. At the end of the day, who am I employing? I'm putting the money and people into the community's hands. Everyone looks different. But I hired people who I thought would be great for these spots. I hired people who I thought that could help me curate and take this vision to life because um, when you look at the city of Charlotte, it looks like Ashe. When listen to the city of Charlotte, it sounds like Ashe. When you say what does the audience that I'm trying to reach, what would serve them? I think the roster of Ashe serves them in almost every single facet, no matter the color of their skin, because there's a person of every kind of ilk and type, and like I said, diversity on the show, body, gender, sexuality. The main eventer who wrestled Trisha Dora last show, Aja Kong, is 53 years old. She's been wrestling for 37 years. You know,
Now, are they going to be wrestling men?
no. They're wrestling women. They're wrestling other women. I think we'll kind of keep it that way for now. I think, unfortunately, I think a lot of cultural aspects and realities um, kind of put a damper on putting a lot of intergender wrestling here. I don't think it's something people really not sure if our audience will want to see that much here. I'm just because I'm placating to a lot of new people. And,
Oh,
you
that's
know,
good to hear. Yeah, because I was really curious about that. I know in like the global aspect, I've seen it, and I've never really been a fan of.
it's hard to yeah, I don't think people want to see us just to get hit in the head by men. So I just don't think that's people our audience wants to see, to be blunt. Yeah, I don't think they want to see us slapping them around.
I really want to thank you so much for doing this interview with me.
For
Um,
sure.
I mean, I really appreciate it, seriously. And I really love this conversation. I
Thank
want
you.
to know at the end, like wrapping this up, what do you see for the future of Ashe? Like, what is your wildest dreams for Ashe?
Oh, it's hard to say what I see for the future, as what I was gonna say, because I used to be more concrete, but as I've started this journey, um, it's changed a little bit. I've always used to see it just as a thing that can keep growing and growing, and we'll do years worth of shows. You know what I mean? Where I have ideas for the 20th show. You know what I mean? I have ideas for the fifth anniversary. All that stuff. But it's a little bit it's grueling. So I'm trying to make sure that this is something that I can continue and keep up as both a performer and an owner and a curator and doing all these things. So it's a lot of hats. And the bigger it gets, the more people you have to have involved. The bigger it gets, the more businessy it gets. And so I'm trying to be cognizant of how much business do I want this to be before it stops being, from the heart. You know what I mean? Because the more cooks you get in the kitchen, it starts becoming corporate. Now I have to be somewhere every week. Now it stops being what I want it to be. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to redefine that as we speak, honestly. But what I do see is this being a stage for people to come and feel like they got to be the best version of themselves and they got to see themselves represented in every single facet, whether that be performer or whether that be audience member, or whether that be musician who wants to spot and wants to sing. Maybe we were able to give someone an opportunity. Maybe they got in front of the right person that one day and now they're signed to a record. I just want to be, I shade to be a profitable place of opportunity and places where people can an alternative. Honestly, I would love for this to be able to grow into a place where you don't have to go to what people see as just the major leagues, where this can be a career for you. This can be ECW. It was feeding people weekly. I would love for it to be that big and that massive, so we can get this. We can create our own universe, create our own world, and don't have to worry about those people who don't get it
Well,
anymore.
I like that. I like that as an answer. And because what my Remnants magazine is, it's an alternative. I want
Yeah.
I want people to have something different as well.